In a remarkable ABC News exclusive last night, Jaycee Dugard told Diane Sawyer the wrenching story of how she was kidnapped at age 11 by a convicted sex offender and held for 18 years. Her self-possession and strength in telling her story in that interview and in a new book she's written made us all wonder how. How did she endure? Displaying extraordinary courage, Jaycee allowed us to interview not just her, but also her therapist to begin to answer that question. Here's ABC's Diane Sawyer.
If there is a way to endure and triumph over hell, who would have thought an 11-year-old girl, Jaycee Dugard, would be the one to find it? Her story is the story of hope.
Sometimes you just have to hold on to any kind of hope to survive.
Now 31 years old, Dugard says, surviving must be your strength and not your shame. It was an indestructible resilience and clinging to her dreams that kept Dugard alive during those 18 years. When her life changed, she was just 11 years old and in the 5th grade. Early one June morning, she climbs the hill out of her home on the way to school. She's stopped by a gray car, paralyzed with a stun gun, and driven 120 miles to a house on the outskirts of San Francisco.
Police started searching the neighborhood.
Police launch a manhunt, roadblocks. Her mother, Terry, is frantic.
She's pretty, young, innocent child.
Her kidnappers, a 40-year-old convicted rapist and pedophile, Philip Garrido, and his wife, Nancy. Garrido handcuffs her, puts her naked in a soundproof storage shack. She drifts in and out of sleep.
I was so lonely. I felt so alone.
That first night, alone and terrified, through a towel covering the single window, she could see moonlight.
At one point, you write, you get up and you take your teeth and you pull a towel off.
I wanted to see where I was.
The moon, arcing back to the mother she adores.
We would always sit on the porch and we would debate whether the full moon or the crescent moon was the better moon.
Do you remember the song you and your mom sang?
I see the moon and the moon sees me. God bless the moon and God bless me.
As months, then years, more years roll by, the missing posters fade. Her mother does not give up. According to her therapist, Rebecca Bailey, who specializes in family reunification, that memory, Jaycee's memory of her mother, may have been the life raft that helped her survive.
What saved her was a early on relationship with her mother that allowed her to go into something with a strong sense of self.
Rebecca Bailey, the therapist, says that just as there is post-traumatic stress, there can be post-traumatic growth. In those years, Jaycee Dugard had trauma enough for many lifetimes. At 13, she was pregnant, and twice would give birth, no medical care, in the squalid backyard. But even though she was still a child, she knew those babies, her daughters, were her life.
I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. I had somebody that was mine. I wasn't alone. I have a second person to love and to love me, and maybe another little piece of my mom to hang on to.
After 6 years being locked inside, away from sun, away from the sky, her captors, increasingly confident, unbolted a door and allowed her to walk out into the yard.
You planted
Yeah.
little flowers.
Yeah, I like to garden.
My colleague, ABC's Chris Cuomo, also spoke to Rebecca Bailey.
How much of what you think Jaycee had inside her naturally worked to her benefit in this situation?
I believe firmly that the core that her mother fostered in this child got her through. I mean, there's no question. On top of it, her ability to learn from the environment and adapt and adjust is another piece of it.
And the mother, still fighting on, holding rummage sales to try to get money to pay for private detectives. alone except for a few friends who quit their jobs to try to help her.
What did it take for a mom to keep the hope alive for all those years?
Fortitude. She did what she had to do and did it in, I mean, there is no part of Terry Probin in my mind that believed that this child was not going to come home. And being the great doctor I am, it stumps me as well.
And even though her memory of her mother was betraying her, her heart did not.
I wanted to see her more than anything.
And worried you'd forget.
Worried I'd forget what she looked like or what she sounded like. Would she forget me?
Though after 18 years of torment, it was too painful to look up at the moon. Oddly, the night before she would be rescued, she looked at the sky.
You really believe that others could have gone through this and held on as you did?
I think they could have, yeah. I don't feel like I did anything special. I just did what I needed to do. Held on to see my mom again, you know?